Okay, well, this looks like it's a little bit of a long section, but we're going to try to get through it. We're going to do it today. And I don't mean try to get through it. I mean, we're going to study it, but I'm going to attempt to get through this section. So I got a cup of coffee, I lit some incense, and we'll see what we got going here. See how long, see how long it takes us and what all we can get from this. I'm a little bit concerned about getting into the formulas as we go, but it doesn't appear that we're into that part just yet. So we're gonna press on. Here we go. The technique of the presence. And this is how glamour is removed, right? This is how we get rid of it. It's how it's dissipated. This is the ending of it. This is how we end it. As we enter upon our consideration of this subject, the student has three things to bear in mind: the existence of the intuition, the fact of illusion, and the overshadowing presence. This presence is revealed by the intuition through the medium of the angel, and when revealed and recognized, brings illusion to an end. So presence is revealed by the intuition through the medium of the angel. The story of illusion is one which must not be confounded with glamour. Illusion is related to the whole process of revelation. And we know that illusion is on the mental plane, and glamour is astral. Glamour can be and often is related to the distortion of that which has been revealed, but it must be borne in mind that illusion is primarily concerned with the reaction of the mind to the unfolding revelation. Glamour can be and often is related to the distortion of that which has been revealed, but it must be borne in mind that illusion is primarily concerned with the reaction of the mind to the unfolding revelation, as the soul registers it and seeks to impress it on the highest aspect of the personal lower self. Illusion is, therefore, the failure of the mind correctly to register, to interpret, or translate that which has been transmitted, and is consequently a sin, if you care for that word, of the intelligent and highly developed people, of those who stand on the path and who are in process of becoming rightly oriented. So illusion is failure of the mind to correctly register or interpret or translate that which has been transmitted, and it is consequently a sin of the intelligent and highly developed people. It is also a sin of accepted disciples as they seek to expand their consciousness in response to soul contact. When they have seen through illusion, and I use this phrase in its esoteric sense, they are ready for the third initiation. Our theme is, therefore, the theme of revelation. And I would like to make some general remarks upon the subject, because thereby the problem of world illusion can be clarified, and incidentally, individual illusion also. The unfoldment of human awareness has been progressive down the ages and has been dependent upon two major and related factors. Boy, this is This gets very interesting because all these things, all these, planes, if you will, fall away. Right? And we're using them essentially. I read last night in From Intellect to Intuition, which is an Alice Bailey, DK book. I read that, I forget which one. Everything is in the mind. Everything that we see is essentially the mind. And it's all mental. It's all a mental plane. This is all mind, which makes perfect sense. Don't get me wrong. It's just when it's put in front of you, it looks differently. It looks different, right? Let's see. The unfoldment of human awareness has been progressive down the ages, has been dependent upon two major and related factors. One, the factor of the gradual development of the human mind through the process of evolution itself. This might be regarded as the innate capacity of that which we call mind, the chitta or mind stuff, to become more and more sensitive to the impact of the phenomenal world and to the impression from the higher worlds of being. The mind is the instrument which registers the process of becoming, but it is also, during the later stages of human unfoldment, capable of registering the nature or function of being. Becoming is revealed through the medium of the intellect, being through the medium of the intuition. In all study of illusion, the instrumental nature of the mind must be remembered, and its power to register accurately, to interpret and transmit knowledge coming from the world of phenomena, and wisdom from the realm of the soul. Must be remembered. The nature of the mind must be remembered, and its power to register accurately, to interpret knowledge coming from the world of the realm of the soul. Okay. So becoming revealed through the medium of the intellect, being through the medium of the intuition. Two, the factor of the method whereby humanity is made aware of that which is not immediately apparent. This is the method or process of what has been called imposed revelation, or the impression conveyed to minds capable of reception of those ideas, beings, plans, and purposes which exist behind the scenes, so to speak, and which are, in the last analysis, the factors which determine and condition the world process. These revelations, or subjective vital impressions, are revealed by the intuition and have nothing to do with the knowledges, impressions, and impacts which are related to the three worlds of human evolution, except insofar that when grasped and apprehended, they have steadily transformed man's way of thinking, way of living, revealed to him his goals, and indicated his true nature. The revelations given throughout the ages and impressed on the minds of those trained to receive them deal with the great universals, are concerned with the whole, and lead to a developed appreciation of the oneness of life and with hylozoistic expression. Hold on one second. This is one of those words that we've had to look up many of times. I've had to look up in the past. hyozoistic. I'm not, I don't claim, I'm not, like, I don't remember all these things all the time. But in philosophy, it's any system that views all matter as alive, either in itself or by participation in the operation of a world soul or some similar principle. Okay. I just want to make sure, as we go, if there's words we don't understand, we should knock them out, because this is the masters have a pretty broad vocabulary, to say the absolute least. The interesting part about that, and I don't want to go into it, is they're able to use the exact proper words at the exact appropriate times to get the message needed. And he's actually, DK has talked about this and how that works. To use the proper word, it's brilliant. It's literally. Two paralleling processes produce humanity and its civilization. One is the evolutionary process itself, whereby the mind of the individual has been gradually unfolded until it becomes the dominant aspect in the personality. And at the same time, a graded, wisely imparted series of revelations, which have led humanity as a whole nearer to the inevitable apprehension of being. They have led him steadily away from identification with form and into those states of consciousness which are super normal from the ordinary human angle, but entirely normal from the spiritual. We understand this one here, but then it's at the same time a graded, wisely imparted series of revelations which have led humanity as a whole near to. All right, this is what we just talked about here. This revelation, these revelations that are presented, and these revelations we've talked about as the world preparing the minds of men for the coming revelation of the Christ and the externalization of the hierarchy. And as we get into these things, you can see when some of these revelations come, they're going to be very profound to those who are not prepared, or to say the least. And even some of those who are prepared even on a slight level, right? Putting this concept specifically into occult terminology, individuality has led to the steady perfecting of the mind with its perception, apprehension, analysis, and interpretation, whilst initiation through the growth of the intuition brings about, when the mental perfecting processes reach a relatively high degree of development, the apprehension of the world of spiritual values, of unified being, and of intuitive understanding. This involves a consequent moving of the point of individual focus out of the world of phenomena into the world of reality. The lower use of the mind and its processes of unfoldment have produced illusion, whilst the unfoldment of the higher mind and later its use as the transmitter of the intuition and of the higher revelation will produce the transfiguration of the three worlds of phenomena in terms of the world of being. And in that light, we shall see light. Sorry, it's just these things are, they do require heavy contemplation as we go here. And some of these things catch me off guard, and because there's so much in the other books that we've studied that come together, and it's hard to grasp or put them in words even, and it renders me, I get rendered dumb quite often. Illusion is frequently misinterpreted and misapplied mental perception of truth. That makes it pretty cut and dry and very simple there. It has naught to do with the mental phase of glamour, though illusion can be carried down into the world of feeling and become glamour. When this happens, its potency is exceedingly great because a thought form has become an entity with vital power, and the magnetic power of feeling is added to the cold form of thought. Ponder on this. It's always, it always seems to be a working down, essentially. And then, but once it's down, now it's got this inertia. So then, it's important to guard our thoughts, as it's been said many times, and to see through these, the illusion. We don't want them becoming glamour, especially after we've dissipated, our glamour, or the majority of it. Or I'm talking individual at this point, but we still have to deal on I suppose on world glamour and the glamour of those around us. We're still living in that. Thought form, when this happens, thought form has become an entity with vital power. But at the stage with which we are now dealing, which is that of pure illusion, a revelation has precipitated upon the mental plane, and owing to failure rightly to apprehend and interpret it, or to apply it usefully, it has developed into an illusion and enters upon a career of deception, of crystallization, and of misinformation. And here's where, on this physical plane, I feel that I might have a slight advantage as this progressed. And this isn't obviously just, this life as things have unfolded, but my education, besides having been in the military and seeing some very, it's interesting to say the least things. Then I was an analyst for the government, and then I was, I did finished my education in intelligence studies, to deepen my hold in the intelligence community, and to become more involved in that world. And it is its own kind of world there. But I was teaching some intelligence processes to the military. And one of the main beneficial traits of an analyst is, and this is part of our part of the education and in college even was understanding biases and our own biases. So this was huge, because essentially becoming an intelligence analyst requires you to be completely unbiased and not just recognize your biases, but also the biases of others. And in these biases are the reasons for failure, intelligence failures. Because you're seeing this, there's the truth, what is apparently available, right? Through this, somewhere, the truth is there, like to be found, right? But we're misinterpreting it and misapplying it and creating these illusions of scenarios that are absolutely not there. And this is the frustration this is a frustration I think that should be easily seen, because we're literally creating all of these scenarios and analyzing the most likely course of action for every foreign entity, the most dangerous course of action for every foreign entity, and every guess that you can make in between there. And we're also red teaming, which means putting ourselves in the mind of the enemy. So we're analyzing the enemy as if we can know them. And then we're trying to determine what, based on psychological factors, what that enemy might do, which is all nonsense. Right? And then this, I can just continue on. It's all this is what I'm saying. My whole education and background in intelligence alludes to creating more and more illusion as you go on a daily basis, because very rarely do you ever get to what we students of the Ageless Wisdom would consider to be factual or truth, or a real understanding of what is actually taking place. It's a lot of speculation, and in all of this speculation, you are now wrapped in an entirely new world of illusion. This world of illusion is it's very thick. The fogs of war it is like being in the eye of a hurricane, in the middle of the vortex of a tornado. It is really difficult, because all you're doing is speculating. It's just a constant process of speculation, which is creating more illusion as you go. And forget it if you don't understand it. In that, we should be able to very easily understand all the glamours that go with being in the military and in those types of communities and having these ranks and positions and clearances and perceived more value or more worth, your opinion being more worth somebody else's opinion. And literally that's all these really are. Now, where do we go from there? Even the so we, in studying this, can see these biases. This is bias. Glamours are bias to ourself and our bias to because there's many different types of biases. There's a list of them that we study, and we're studying. It's interesting because we're studying it again now, but in the very real way, in the energetic way. And it makes that much more sense to me now because of my previous my education and experience There's no place in the world that is more glamorous than the military. There's nowhere. Hollywood is not as glamorous as the military is, because it's available to every person who walks through the doors. Immediately, there's glamour, and everybody gets glamored immediately. Very few don't. That's a whole discussion that we could dig into there. But the military is a fantastic reflection of a microcosmic reflection of the whole thing. And we can pick it apart in there, and we can really analyze it. And I think it's very easy to see that that is also the case on a much larger scale. So yeah, I didn't mean to go off there, but this bias, I'm lucky to have, experienced that level, but I'm also lucky enough to have seen it, that you cannot get stuck. We have to keep going. Even if we, and here's my, and this might be completely wrong, but if I misinterpret and misapply a mental perception of truth at this point, I'm delaying something that could have been an opportunity. I'm missing an opportunity, but I am not allowing it to sink in to the point where it would become a glamour. It is not going to get this vital power that I can see, and it's not going to do, like, none of this is going to happen at this point. And I could listen, I may be full of it, but this is my my perspective on this is because I'm not hanging on to anything anymore. You can't convince me to hang on to anything, hardly. We're going straight ahead, and we're looking for the reality behind this. So if it has to do with this lower three worlds, we're not hanging on to it. It may be truth, maybe not, maybe not, doesn't matter. We're looking for the truth behind it. We're looking for energetic causes. We're not getting stuck in this for very long at all, if at all possible. But at the stage with which we are now dealing, which is that of pure illusion, a revelation has precipitated upon the mental plane owing to a failure rightly to apprehend and interpret it, or to apply it usefully. It has developed into an illusion and enters upon a career of deception, of crystallization, and of misinformation. So this is our world. This is the lower three worlds. So the theme of this technique is therefore concerned primarily with the process of revelation. The process has been, and today is the main testimony and guarantee of the existence behind the scenes of the phenomenal life of a revealing group or agency whose task is of a triple nature. A, to gauge the unfoldment of human consciousness and to meet its constant appeal and demand for further light and knowledge. B, to judge what is the next needed revelation and what form it should take. Brilliant. Through what medium it should emerge, and where and when it should appear. And this to me sounds like the justification and the need and the reasoning for the conclaves that take place. And that makes a lot of sense. And the timings of things, right? So to ascertain, and also to ascertain with what obstructions, hindrances, and preconceived ideas the new incoming revelation will have to contend. This is unbelievably brilliant from my perspective right now. This is This is truly the height of analytical thinking, is what I feel like I'm looking at right now. When you consider, analysis or being an analyst, and because we just talked about this and I just brought it up, it's my doing, but as we're looking at this and we're going into this so deeply, this is a military type operation, but it's from the highest level of understanding, with the highest level of analysis, with the highest operational, input as to the geometry, if you will, of how to insert these revelations or thought forms into the whole, and when to do that. This is beyond. It's beyond. It's unbelievable. All right. So two, the fact of the presence. This presence is the impelling force behind all revelation and is in reality God immanent, striving ever for recognition and itself impelled thereto by the fact of God transcendent, which we know is the facts. They're both facts. God immanent and God transcendent. And this is what we need to understand. And we need to understand more or less because the Christians and the United States probably have the God transcendent has been pushed on us, when God immanent is what we need to probably grasp a bit more here. And that may have something to do with the revelations that will be coming, hopefully. All right. The Christ in the heart. How about that? Up, down, and all around. Three, the influence of the angel, who is the individualized seat of consciousness, though whom after due growth and response to the personal lower self will come the revelation of the presence. All true revelation is concerned with the unfolding glory of divinity in some field of expression, thereby testifying to the latent hidden presence. I don't know how you could get to this understanding without either, an extremely long amount of time passing without a master, without the books, without helpers, without guides. It would be just thank God for these books and for those who are here to guide us and help us and have put laid the seeds and the whole thing is, when we get to the point where we can kind of testify to these things being true, and even being on the, at the door and being right where this book is talking. It's like, we can be right here and see this and know this to be true, even though we don't know what's necessarily beyond. All right. So it's, there's a spectrum here where we are still picking up on these things, and we don't have to have been, fully and, haven't made it through every initiation to understand these things. That's not necessarily true. We can begin to understand these things prior and know that they are true, even ahead of time, essentially. Not to say that we know what comes after. That gets tricky. So the reaction of the intuitives throughout the world to that revelation and the form in which they present it to the world thinkers. These latter are ever the first to appreciate and appropriate the new truth. The intuitives present the next phase of truth in a relatively pure form, even though at the time of presentation, it may be symbolically veiled. I think that's pretty clear. But then we have the response of the thinking world to the presented truth. It's at this point that illusion appears, right? And misinterpretation and misrepresentation take place. These untrue interpretations of revealed truth, when they have lasted long enough and have acquired momentum, add to the general illusion and become part of it, and thus feed and are fed by the world illusion. Yeah, we got to be careful because there's illusion present that can just simply grab the next thing and suck it in, right? This is the built up illusory form of thought developed down the ages, which controls so much of the mass belief. When the revelation reaches this stage, the mass of men become involved. They recognize the illusion as truth. They regard this illusion as reality. They fail to grasp the significance of the veiled, symbolically presented revelation, but confuse it with the illusory presentation. And thus the intuitively perceived revelation becomes a distorted, twisted doctrine. So we're seeing the idea become a distorted ideal, becoming an idol. Theological interpretations and dogmas fall into this category, and there ensues a reenactment of the ancient drama of the blind leading the blind, to which Christ referred as he faced the theologians of his time. The above statements are true of all revelation as it comes forth from the emanating center of light, whether they concern so-called religious truth or scientific discoveries, or the great standard of spiritual values whereby advanced humanity of both hemispheres seek to live, and which from time to time move on a step in significance and in importance. All right, we'll talk about intuition dispels individual illusion. So we just kind of went through the intuition and these, the intuitives of the world and how this process, basically comes about. The process of revelation. The fact of the presence, the influence of the angel, the reaction of the intuitives, and the response of the thinking world. And this is true of all, the statements above are true of all revelation as it comes forth from the emanating center of light. Very interesting. Intuition dispels individual illusion. And we know revelation and intuition go hand in hand, right? So today we have reached a crisis in the field of human apprehension, and can now enter into a new era where an illusion can be dispelled and thinkers can begin to register accurately and without misapprehension that which the intuitives convey to them. The statement does not as yet apply to the general public. It will be a long time before they will respond without illusion, because illusion is based upon the thought form building activity of the lower mind. The masses are just beginning to use that lower mind, and illusion is therefore for them a necessary stage of testing and training, and one through which they must pass, or they will lose much valuable experience, leaving undeveloped their powers of discrimination. This is a point which all teachers of occultism should have in mind. It is essential, consequently, that the masses are taught the significance of illusion and be trained to see and choose the kernel of pure truth in any presentation of truth with which they may be confronted. It is essential, likewise, that the world intuitives learn to use and control and understand the faculty of spiritual perception, of divine isolation, and appropriate response which characterizes the intuition. This they can do through the practice of the technique of the presence, but not as it is usually taught and presented. And this training it's education and training, critical thinking is one of the best college classes that I ever took, or the most profound, the most significant of all of them was critical thinking, probably in terms of actually learning how to think properly, to look through illusion and to see that most of this is speculation, but to know that you're speculating, but there is truth at the originating source of it, and you don't know it. That's humbling. At the same time, and my thought is, it should be humbling, and in a community, and I'm thinking of the intelligence community now. They're not a very humble community. They should be extremely humble because they really don't ever know anything. I'm just kind of pondering on this because this is so close. This education should be that of critical thinking, and we should be taught this critical analysis and learn, psychology and all the things, this education moving forward that DK is presenting, and hope someday this will happen when we reach a certain, whatever point we get to there, and we'll begin to understand ourselves, or want to understand ourselves more. Perhaps I shall make my meaning clear if I state that this technique falls into certain scientific lines or modes of work for which much of the training given in schools of true meditation and Raja Yoga systems have prepared the aspirant. These stages begin where the usual formulas leave off and presuppose facility in approach the angel or the soul, and an ability to raise the consciousness to a point of soul fusion. I will list the processes or stages as follows. 1, the evocation of the stage of tension. This is basic and essential. It is a tension brought about by complete control of the personal self so that it is fitted for contact with the real. That is very deep. In that alone, this tension it holds its own treatise, probably, I would say. You could attribute a volume or more to this tension. An evocation of the stage of tension. an evocation of the stage of tension. It has a very deep meaning in itself as well, right? As opposed to invoking the tension, this is an evocation of the tension. Now we have 2, the achieving of a state of fusion with the soul or with the angel, which guards the approach to the path of the higher evolution. 3, the holding of the mind steady in the light of the soul, which remains the attitude of the lower self for the entire remaining period of work, held at the point of tension by the soul and not by an effort of the personality. The soul undertakes this holding when the personal self has done its utmost to achieve the desired tension. Holy cow, that is very deep there. That alludes to quite a bit as well. And it says so much about our daily life, I want to say, about, lifting ourselves up and staying there into higher levels of consciousness, and not coming back down. It says a lot. So these are the 3 preliminary steps for which the practice of alignment should have prepared the student of the higher mysteries. These steps must precede all effort to develop the intuition, and this may take several months or even years of careful preparation. Fire is the symbol of the mind, and these are the first 3 stages of the Agni Yoga discipline, or of the yoga of fire, for which Raja Yoga has prepared the student. Next comes 6 more stages in the technique, and these must be thoroughly understood and form the basis of prolonged brooding and intelligent reflection carried on whilst the daily avocations and duties are being performed and not carried out at certain set times. The trained intuitive or disciple lives ever the dual life of mundane activity and of intense and simultaneous spiritual reflection. This will be the outstanding characteristic of the Western disciple, in contradistinction to the Eastern disciple who escapes from life into the silent places and away from the pressures of daily living and constant contact with others. The task of the Western disciple is much harder, but that which he will prove to himself and to the world as a whole will be still higher. This is to be expected in the evolutionary process. This is to be expected if the evolutionary process means anything. The Western races must move forward into spiritual supremacy without obliterating the Eastern contribution, and the functioning of the law of rebirth holds the clue to this demonstrates this necessity. So it's just an evolution of, more advanced spiritual growth. The tide of life moves from east to west as moves the sun, and those who in past centuries stuck the note of Eastern mysticism must strike and are now striking the note of Western occultism. Therefore, the following stages must follow upon the 3 earlier. We will continue with the numbering as given, for what I here suggest is a formula for a more advanced meditation attitude. I said not form. Definite and sustained effort to sense the presence throughout the universe in all forms and in all presentations of truth. This could be expressed in the words, the effort to isolate the germ or seed of divinity, which has brought all forms into being. I would point out, and then that word isolate we recognized that from just a few paragraphs above there. And that, as we were talking about the intuition by the intuitives, we're to isolate the germ or seed of divinity, which has brought all forms into being. I would, and their job would be, I suppose, to isolate that, that revelation, something to that effect. I would point out that this is not the attainment of a loving attitude and a sentimental approach to all people and circumstances. That is the mystical way, and though not intended to be negated in the disciple's life, is not used at this time in the process of effective approach. It is the effort primarily to see in the light which the angel radiates, the point of light behind all phenomenal appearances. This is therefore the transference of the mystical vision to the higher levels of awareness. It is not the vision of the soul, but the vision or the spiritual sensing of that which the light of the soul can aid in revealing. The flickering soul light in the personal self has enabled the disciple to see the vision of the soul in that light to reach union with the soul, even if only temporarily. Now, the greater light of the soul becomes focused like a radiant sun, and it reveals in its turn a still more stupendous vision, that of the presence, of which the angel is the guarantee and promise. As the light of the moon is the guarantee that the light of the sun exists, so the light of the sun is the guarantee, did you but know it, of a still greater light. He's talking about the central spiritual sun. This is there's a whole lot going on in there. No, this is not it. This is, I would point out, and this is really a pretty big deal right here. I would point out that this is not the attainment of a loving attitude and a sentimental approach to all people and circumstances. That's the mystical way, and though not intended to be negated in the disciples' life, it's not used this time in the process of effective approach. And mainly because that approach would not work here in the, in the West. It's not going to work. People think you're crazy if you approach them like that. This, with a loving attitude and sentimental approach to all people and circumstances, you will be ridiculed, and that does not do us any good in this work. And that includes the language that we choose to use, the words that we choose. If you want to reach people, there's going to need to be an intelligent use of words, an intelligent use of emotion to resonate where they're at that particular time. And that's a very interesting thing there. But our goal is to stay. Our goal is not, that's not our fight, essentially. And this was told to me literally yesterday. Our fight is not with others. And I mean fight like in a spiritual good against evil type of thing. I don't mean it like literal, like we need to go out and battle the evil or something. That's not where our fight is not with others, or trying to convince others or recruit others or proselytize. That's not our fight. Our fight is to stay in the light, in the presence, as the observer, to get as high as we can, stay there, be as clear as we can, And that is that's what we're trying, that's what we have to do until that's not the case anymore, in which I can't say what that next case might be. But I think it can be, pretty well said that our issue is not worrying about others so much. It's worrying about ourselves, because it includes others. There's no I in team, right? We drop the I, and then we recognize that, we're beyond that. So, as is always said, work on yourself, and change yourself and change the world. And this we find to be true in our daily life, actually. So then, having sensed the presence, not theoretically, but in vibrating response to its existence, there comes the stage of the ascertaining of the purpose. Hope of identification with the purpose lies too far ahead, even for the average initiate, under the status of master. Okay. With that unattainable stage, for us, we are not concerned, but we are concerned with the effort to achieve an understanding of that which, through the medium of form, is seeking to embody the high purpose at any particular point in the evolutionary cycle. This is possible and has been achieved down the ages by those who have rightly approached and duly reflected upon the way of the higher evolution. This way is revealed to the disciple, even though it may not concern the intuitive message which he may bring back from his high adventure. And that high adventure being getting this high up, into consciousness, staying there, getting what we need, and then coming back with the ideal, the intuitive implications, I guess you could say. That might be weird. So 6, then he then carries some world problem from design, which his mind has evolved or his heart desired for helping of humanity, into what is esoterically called the triple light of the intuition. This light is formed by the blending of the light of the personal self, focused in the mind, the light of the soul, focused in the angel, and the universal light, which the presence emits. This, when done with facility through concentration and long practice, will produce 2 results. A, there will suddenly dawn upon the disciple's waiting mind the answer to his problem, the clue to what is needed to bring relief to humanity, the information desired, which, when applied, will unlock some door in the realm of science, psychology, or religion. This door, when opened, will bring relief or release to many. Okay, so this is the reason we do this. As before, I've told you, the intuition is never concerned with individual problems or inquiries, as so many self-centered aspirants think. It is purely impersonal and only applicable to humanity in a synthetic sense. So, dang. So we got to get over ourselves constantly. Right? B, the intruding agent of light is recognized as one to whom can be entrusted some revelation, some new impartation of truth, some significant expansion from a seed of truth already given to the race. He then sees a vision, hears a voice, registers a message, or highest form of all, he becomes a channel of power and light to the world, a conscious embodiment of divinity, or a custodian of divine principle. These forms constitute true revelation, imparted or embodied, They are still rare, but will increasingly be developed in humanity. 7, the next few stages are called in preparation for the revelation. A relinquishing of the higher way, the return to the angel or refocusing in the soul, a pause or interlude of constructive thinking under the influence of the angel, the turning of the mind to the formulation of those forms of thought which must embody the revelation, and then again a pause, which is called the pause preceding presentations. All right, I had to take a pause there for a second, but we just did this number 7 here, and that's really a process, and really a few of the stages. It's very deep. To see if we can intuitively grasp the depth of this. So let's keep going. This is a book that can certainly be studied over and over again. The presentation of the revelation or of the imparted truth and its precipitation into the world of illusion comes next. In that world of illusion, it undergoes the fiery ordeal, wherein some of the fire within that which is revealed wings its way back to the source from whence it came. Some of it serves to destroy the revealer, and some to burn those who recognize the revelation. This is a phase of Agni Yoga, which, as you can see, is only for those who can penetrate beyond the angel into the place where fire dwelleth, and where God, the presence, functions as a consuming fire, and it waits for the hour of total revelation. This is a symbolic rendering of a great truth. In the case of the individual initiate, the third initiation, the transfiguration, marks the consummation of the process. Only glory then is seen. Only the voice of the presence is heard, and union with the past, the present, and the future is reached. The succumbing of the revelation to the prevailing illusion, its descent into the world of glamour, and its subsequent disappearance as a revelation, and its emergence as a doctrine. Wait, let's read that again. The succumbing of the revelation to the prevailing illusion, its descent into the world of glamour, and its subsequent disappearance as a revelation, and its emergence as a doctrine. But in the meantime, humanity has been helped and led forward. The intuitives continue to work, and the inflow of that which is to be revealed never ceases. The basic technique underlies both primary and secondary revelations. In the case of the first, the time cycle is long, and the second, the time cycle is short. A very good instance of this process is demonstrated by one of the secondary points of revelation in connection with the teaching which emanated from the hierarchy, the custodian of secondary revelations, as Shambhala is of primary, 50 years ago, and which took the form of the secret doctrine. HPB was the penetrating, sensing, appropriating, intuitive. The revelation she conveyed followed the accustomed routine of all secondary revelation from the source to the outer plane. There, the minds of men, veiled by illusion and clouded by glamour, formulated it into an inelastic doctrine, recognizing no further revelation and holding steadily many of the theosophical groups that the secret doctrine was a final revelation, and that not must be recognized but that book, and not deemed correct but their interpretations of that book. If they are correct, then evolutionary revelation is ended and the plight of humanity is hard indeed. Right, that to me, where I come from, and that makes no sense. We don't do that. We just keep going. We're always going. We're moving. Even the neophyte upon the way of the intuition can begin to develop in himself the power to recognize that which the lower mind cannot give him. Some thought of revealing potency to be used for the helping of the many may drop into his mind. Some new light upon an old truth, an old truth may penetrate, releasing the truth from its trammels of orthodoxy, thus illuminating his consciousness. This he must use for all and not for himself alone. Little by little, he learns the way into the world of the intuition. Day by day and year by year, he becomes more sensitive to divine ideas and more apt in appropriating them wisely for the use of his fellow men. As I read this, and as we move in this life and we progress, there are astrological conditions that come up. There are times, apparently, that with the right certain astrological condition, if we're doing this work, we will be released from some old trammels of orthodoxy, and thus illuminating our consciousness. When something like Jupiter, which comes around a lot, conjuncts with certain other, aspects, other planets, when Uranus hits something the right way and a lightning bolt is shot and releases that person from some old orthodoxy or dogma, right? These things happen quite regularly. If we're on the path, we can see these things in our transits as they come. If you're not following your transits, I might, if I may, recommend that you do get an astrologer and you do get your transits updated yearly, and you track them and follow them, because you still do have a life in this lower three worlds. We're not free from it. And that means the story continues. That means that astrology continues. And it is important to keep up on that. And it's beneficial to keep up on that. And if you don't have an astrologer, we certainly do, who is amazing. And is more than just an astrologer too, by the way, and is a student of the Ageless Wisdom, who really helps, who's a student of the Ageless Wisdom for, I want to say 50 years. The hope of the world and the dispelling of illusion lies in the development of intuitives and their conscious training There are many natural intuitives who work as a blend of the higher psychism with flashes of true intuition. There must be the training of the exact intuitive, paralleling their intuitive response and their effort to precipitate their intuition into the world of human thought. There must also be the steady development of the human mind so that it can grasp and apprehend what is projected. And in this too lies the hope of the race. All right, well, we're going to keep going. Today, the world is full of illusions, many of them veiled under the form of idealisms. It is full of wishful thinking and planning. And even though much of this is rightly oriented and expresses the fixed determination of the intelligentsia to create better living conditions for the entire population of the world, the question arises, is there in the sum total of this wishful thinking enough of the essential dynamic livingness which will carry it down into physical demonstration and factual expression and thus truly meet human need? And I don't know, but I would say that that did not happen as well as it was, or as it might have been hoped for during this time. I would point out that the two greatest revealing agents who have ever come to Earth within the range of modern history made the following simple revelations to humanity. One, the cause of all human suffering is the desire and personal selfishness. Give up desire and you will be free. We know Buddha brought that. There is a way of liberation and it leads to illumination. It profits a man nothing to gain the whole world and lose his soul. Every human being is a son of God, and there is a way of liberation, and it is the way of love and sacrifice. Okay, very good. The lives of these revealers were symbolic representations of that which they taught, and the rest of their teaching, but an extension of their central themes. It's kind of like the way we're learning here, right? Symbolic representations of that which are taught, and the rest of the teaching is but an extension of the central theme. Central theme, decentralized teachings, and bringing it all back, right? Like a spider web in a sense. Their contribution was an integral part of a general revelation of the ages, which has led men from the primitive state of human existence to the complex state of modern civilization. This general revelation can be called the revelation of the path, which leads out of form to the center of all life. The purity of this revelation has been preserved down the ages by a small handful of disciples, initiates, and true esotericists who have always been present upon the earth, defending the simplicity of that teaching, seeking for those who could respond to and recognize the germ or seed of truth, and training men to take their place and to tread the way of intuitive perception. One of the major tasks of the hierarchy is to seek for and find those who are sensitive to revelation and whose minds are trained so that they can formulate the emerging truths in such a way that they reach the ears of the world thinkers relatively unchanged. All revelation, however, when put into words and word forms, loses something in its divine clarity. Much of the revelation of the past has come along the lines of the religious impulse, and as the illusion has deepened and grown in time, The original simplicity, as was conveyed by its revealers, has been lost. All basic revelations are presented in the simplest forms. Accretion after accretion crept in. The minds of men made the teaching complex through their mental dissertations until the great theological systems were built up, which we call, for instance, the Christian church and the Buddhist system. Their founders would have much difficulty in recognizing the 2 or 3 fundamental and divine facts or truths which they sought to reveal and emphasize. So great is the mantle of illusion which has been thrown over the simple pronouncements of the Christ and of the Buddha. The vast cathedrals and the pompous ceremonies of the Orthodox are far removed from the humble way of life of the Christ, the master of all the masters and teachers, the teacher of alike of angels and of men, and from the simplicity of his present way of life as he watches and waits for the return of his people to the simple way of spiritual realization. As this process continues, and as we read these things, we can know that this process is also intuitively happening in our life. We read these things, but these processes, we are doing this work. You're doing it. Even without having read this before, we should be able to grasp this. It does help to read these things, but nevertheless, the work is going on even in people that have never been exposed to this material. So, but we are being trained slightly, in a different way. We're being trained to pay more attention, to be more aware of the process in recognition of the whole thing. So great has been the illusion that in the West today, men talk of the temporal power of the Catholic Church. The Protestant churches are split up into warring factions. The Christian Science Church is known for its ability to amass money and to teach its adherents to do so and to achieve temporary good health. The Greek Orthodox Church was corrupt throughout, and only the simple faith of the uncultured and the poor has preserved any semblance of the truth in its original simple form. They have no ability for high-sounding theological discussions, but they do believe that God is love. Just simply that there is a way which leads to peace and light. And then if they deny their own material desires, they are pleasing God. I know, widely generalizing, brother of mine, for I do know all that there are wise and good Christians and churchmen within the theological systems. These, however, spend not their time in theological discussions, but in loving their fellow men. And this they do because they love Christ and all for which he stands. They are not interested in building great churches of stone and marble and in gathering together the money needed for their support. They are interested to gather out of those who form the true church upon the inner spiritual plane and in helping them to walk in the light. The illusion of power, the illusion of superiority taints them not. After the world crisis is over, churchmen everywhere will not rest until they can discover how to penetrate through the illusion of doctrine and dogma, which engulfs them and finds their way back to Christ and his simple message, which has in it the power to save the world if recognized and practiced. Okay, listen here, let's listen to this again. The illusion of power, the illusion of superiority taints them not. After the world crisis is over, churchmen everywhere will not rest until they can discover how to penetrate through the illusion of doctrine and dogma, which engulfs them, and find their way back to Christ and his simple message, which has in it the power to save the world if recognized and practiced. So we have to ask ourselves, is the world crisis over? I'm sorry. I am actually going to take a picture of that statement there so I can remember it for later. Much of the true revelation since the time of Christ has come to the world along the line of science. The presentation, for instance, of material substance, scientifically proven as essentially only a form of energy, was as great a revelation as any given by the Christ or the Buddha. The presentation, for instance, of material substance as essentially only a form of energy was as great a revelation as any given by the Christ or the Buddha. It completely revolutionized men's thinking and was, little as you may think it, a major blow struck at the great illusion. It's enormous. A little as you may think it. Not us. I guess some, as little as some may think it, but not us. Certainly, it is major, it's huge. There's an ardent truth, if you will. It related energy to force, form to life, and man to God, and held the secret of transformation, transmutation, and transfiguration. Yeah, that's gigantic. The revelations of science, when basic and fundamental, are as divine as those of religion, but both have been prostituted to meet human demand. Right. The era is close at hand when science will bend every effort to heal humanity's sores and build a better and happier world. Well, it's close, man, but we got to stand up. We got to go deep, and we have to really prevent, as DK says, seal the door where evil dwells. At this point, we have to do this. The revelation of science, though focused often through one man or woman, are more specifically the result of group endeavor and of trained group activity than are the revelations of religion, so-called. Revelation, therefore, comes in two ways. And as you think about this, and when we think about the evolution of physics and, I guess we say mathematics or into the quantum, we see that there's these ideas, and then these guys fought it out on the physical plane through their mathematical formulas and hypotheses and theories, right? They started hashing all this out, and they fought with each other. They made each other look silly and all, but in this thesis, antithesis comes synthesis, right? If you've ever read any, Hegel, philosophy of Hegel, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. So this is good. Every one of them contributed, right? It doesn't matter who got the credit. That's negligent, actually, and foolish in a lot of ways. So one, through the effort, aspiration, and achievement of one man who is close to the hierarchy and so imbued with conscious divinity that he can receive the message direct from the central divine source. He has joined the ranks of the great intuitives and works freely in the world of divine ideas. He knows his mission clearly. He chooses his sphere of activity with deliberation and isolates the truth or truths which he deems appropriate for the need of the time. Ah, that's incredible. He comes forth as a messenger of the Most High, leads a dramatic and arresting life of service, and symbolizes in his life events certain basic truths which have already been revealed, but which he pictorially reenacts. Are we seeing a pattern here? He epitomizes in himself the revelations of the past, and to them adds his own contribution of the new revelation, which it is his specific function to present to the world. And this is a pattern that can be seen likely in your own life. I want to say that. I don't, we have to look at this. If you can't see it now, I want to say, well, you'll be able to see it at some point. These things are pretty, as we move up and we get rid of the glamour, we dissipate glamour, we see through illusion, we begin to see the meaning behind things, the reason, the logic, with more reality, even the glimpses of it. And if we see how this process and these initiations go, and we look at the lives of the messianic messengers that have come before us, it's patterned. And even if you're bringing a little truth to the world in your little corner, in our little corner of the world, the pattern should ultimately, it's going to be very similar. Right? So through the effort of a group of seekers, such as the scientific investigators in every country, who together are searching for light on the problems of manifestation or for some means to alleviate human suffering, a revelation comes. The effort of such a group often lifts upon the wings of its unrealized aspiration some one man who can then penetrate into the world of divine ideas and there finds the longed for cure or key, and thus he intuitively discovers a long sought secret. The discovery, when of the first rank, is as much a revelation as the truths presented by the world teachers, who shall say that the statement that God is love is of more value than the statement that all is energy. Wow, okay, yeah, this is great. The route which the revelation then flows is the same in both cases, and illusion overtakes both forms of revelation. But, and here's a point upon which I would ask you to reflect, there is a little less illusion gathered around the revelations of science than has gathered around the revelations of what humanity calls the more definitely spiritual truths, because they're seen so much as subjective and science is seen to be much more concrete, right? So one reason lies in the fact that the last great spiritual revelation given by the Christ was given 2,000 years ago, and the development of man's mind and his responsiveness to truth has grown greatly since that time. Again, the revelations of science are largely the result of group tension, understood, eventually focused in one intuitive recipient, and the revelation is thereby protected. And then the process starts again, it seems. That's where it's how it looks like, if you ask me right now. Today, as humanity awaits the revelation which will embody the thoughts and dreams and constructive goal of the new age, the demand comes for the first time from a large group of intuitively inclined people. Okay. And we're looking at probably, what I would say, the new group of world servers. I said not intuitives, brothers of old. This group is now so large and its focus is now so real and its demand so loud that it is succeeding in focusing the massed intent of the people. Therefore, whatever revelation may emerge in the immediate future will be better protected by the spirit of understanding than any previous one. This is the significance of the words of the New Testament, every eye shall see him. Humanity as a whole will recognize the revealing one. In the past ages, the messenger from on high was only recognized by and known to a mere handful of men, and it took decades and sometimes centuries for his message to penetrate into the hearts of humanity. The stress of the times also, and the development of the sense of proportion, plus an enforced return to simplicity of living and requirements, may save the coming revelation from too swift and quick submergence in the fire of the great illusion. Well, if there's not some implications in all of this, friends, in these last two paragraphs here, and this has been talked about before. You know, we read it in the Reappearance of the Christ, which is in full on YouTube, which the Moria Federation has talked about much. Michael Robbins has discussed much. A lot of his life was dedicated to this concept. He said he's coming back to continue the work. It will be apparent to you from the above that the mode of handling world affairs, states of consciousness, and conditions in the three worlds is one in which the disciple and initiate work from above downwards. Of course that makes sense, right? That's one of those things that is it should sink in pretty quickly for us. Of course, it's being worked from above downwards, as everything else. The method is in reality a repetition of the evolutionary arc, or I'm sorry, the method is in reality a repetition of the involutionary arc in which, like the creator, from a vantage point of exterior direction, energy, force, and forces are directed into the world of phenomena and produce definite effects upon the substance of the three planes. This is a point which should be most carefully remembered. And it is for this reason that the technique of the presence must always be employed prior to all other techniques. It establishes contact with the directing spiritual agent and enables the disciple to assume the attitude of the detached observer and an agent of the plan. When this technique is correctly followed, it brings the intuition into play, and the world of meaning, lying behind the world of phenomena, stands revealed, thereby dispelling illusion. Truth, as it is seen and known, forms an outer world of phenomena, outer from the angle of the soul, and therefore encompassing the three worlds of our familiar daily living, are seen to be but symbols of an inward and spiritual reality. And that is something that we should contemplate quite often. To see, first, I want to say that the symbols of of the things that are happening in our life, and the meaning of these things of events that happen in our life, they can be seen. I want to say I really looked at that for a while, but I moved. I haven't been doing that as probably as well as I should be, is all I'm saying. Maybe they just, once you gather the basics, it's a living document in the mind almost. It's like a living understanding. It just comes more fluidly, maybe not, maybe I'm crazy. But anyway, that was kind of a long morning, but boy, am I glad we did that. And this is something that we really need to go through again and again, and probably and again. I know that's hard for us to do And I know maybe we don't do that because there's so much here, man. You know, these books, we're going to read some more books after we get done with this. We're going to continue on with the understandings from these books we will take with us, just like the understandings from Bethlehem to Calvary are coming with us. From the reappearance of the Christ are coming with us. From initiations, human and solar are coming. Initiation, human and solar are coming with us. And just like as they're really, this is unfolding in line with a treatise on white magic, which we're only doing once a week. But this is bringing that's a very important book. And that is unfolding with this and in line with it. They're kind of working together, if you ask me. They're helping to reveal each other on a grand scale. And they're really, even if you specifically as an individual are beyond these stages, they are helping train us to see the human condition in a much clearer way. So the training continues regardless of where we might be at, essentially, until you get to the point where you don't need any more of this. All right. Okay, I'm going to stop it there for today. We're going to pick it back up. Tomorrow is Friday. We're going to pick it back up with the technique of light. The technique of the presence was awesome and something to really ponder on. Okay, have a good one.